This podcast is recorded on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam peoples.
British Columbia, I've seen your mountains high, seen your pretty rainbows and your blue crystal skies, watched your winding rivers as they flow around the bend. To me you're not a stranger, you'll always be a friend.
Coming to you from the West Coast, this is Politicos. Today is September 4th, 2025.
I'm Scott Lunenbaum.
And I'm Ian Bushfield.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you.
How was circumnavigating the Pacific, kind of?
Not as bad as it could have been with two small children. Tokyo's cool. Very fun city. It was my
Co-sign on that one.
5-year-old. Yeah, it was my 5-year-old's favorite. She loves how busy it is and how many people there are. The best thing is walking the underground subways to get to the pedestrian pathways to get to the station against rush hour. And it's just a wave of silent people in black and white business wear going to work, and my colorful, noisy, eating in the just rude family going the other way by ourselves.
You see, I when I was there for that week, I just didn't ride the trains during rush hour. It was the benefit of kind of having the vacation timing, which, not young kids who were probably up and running around, is just slept in for that, and then took the trains when they were a little less packed, and it wasn't too bad, other than the fact that the stations are a maze. You really need Google Maps.
We got lost getting out of Shinjuku the first time. The rest was better, but jet lag was bad for us that first day. We were up at like 2 or 3, and it was hot and muggy there, being summer. After that, we did Australia. Australia was cool. I said earlier, it's like Bizarro Canada because we stayed mostly in Melbourne and Adelaide. What was interesting to see is solar panels are huge there. Like every other house has solar on it. Pretty cool. No EVs in Japan, though, that I saw, and just a handful in Australia. Little differences. And then we stopped at Fiji on the way back and just sat at the whitest resort with all the Australians who were visiting there before coming home. So that was an experience. You did a great job holding down the fort with a bunch of wonderful guests. I've listened to most of them.
Hey.
I liked it. I should go away more often. To help fund me going away, go to patreon.com/politicos. If we raise 10,000 a year more, maybe we can each take some small holidays.
Maybe. We'll see. Probably we'd be looking to expand the offerings more than the holiday time if we could raise that much, but that's a discussion.
Give us
for the
money
future.
so we can do less podcasting.
That's really selling it there.
We got some stuff to talk about. I know it's been kind of quiet for the last month, but politics is possibly warming up. There are strikes here in BC. There are calls to end the temporary foreign worker program, and Carney is hinting at some coming major projects. I know you've been eagerly awaiting them. Well, the wait is still on. Let's get into it. Here in BC, the BC General Employees Union has been on strike. As Global News describes it, it's dragging on for its third day, the rolling strikes.
Practically forever.
Yeah, I know. And beyond that, BCTF, the Teachers Federation, is also in negotiations and has been for a few months and may turn to job action depending how things go. Really puts the first kind of labor test to David Eby. We noticed, I don't know if we talked about it too much on the podcast, but John Horgan's time as leader was like one of the quietest for job action in the province's entire history. Like it's one of those, there wasn't a story, so it doesn't get noticed until you look back and go, oh, they actually managed to keep the unions relatively happy for a longer stretch of time than usually happens.
Yeah, that seems to be coming to an end, though.
The tight fiscal situation of a province that has spent more and cut more taxes starts to come back to bite you at some point, especially as inflation starts to increase and workers want.
Although, other than the carbon tax, it's hard to name a tax that the NDP has cut.
The income tax he just did after getting elected. Or did he walk that back?
Yeah, but they raised that early on. Like, pretty sure it's still up compared to when they took office.
Revenues are still down as opposed to a month, 6 months ago, making it, or I guess a year ago.
Yeah, that's a start of a recession for you.
But, workers still want to get theirs and make sure they're able to afford a increasingly expensive province. And so here we are. I don't know. I haven't looked too closely at the details of the GEU strike. I was following some of the stuff in Alberta where I know the public employees there were set to strike but did sign a deal, and the teachers there are like ready to strike and the government's also ready to lock them out. But it's kind of just like a new era of...
It's the same thing that's basically being there for like every government workers labor negotiation, at least for the more white collar parts of it, of want more pay and arguments over where the boundaries of work from home should be.
Yeah. The government's last offer was a 1.5% increase in the first year and 2% in the second year, which I believe is below inflation. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how the government balances this, as well as, the fiscal constraints it's under, and how they deal with the education system, and if that starts to heat up. My kid is in school now, and my partner is a teacher, and so I will be watching that very closely. There's a little more heat, though, over the temporary foreign worker program. This has been simmering for quite a while, with calls in various quarters going back like 20 years or more.
Yeah, I mean, this was a big thing during the Harper years. Kind of calmed down a bit during the early part of the Trudeau years. They made a few changes, but kind of 2001, 2002, there's a big ramp up in
2021.
Yes, 2021, 2022. In that time, there's a big ramp up in the number of temporary foreign workers brought into the country. Bunch of that was at the urging of the business community to try and smooth out some of the COVID disruptions and everything there, but there was a noticeable spike in the last couple of years,
which has kind of soured public opinion on it. I don't think if you polled people ever really looked at that program and went, man, this is something we're proud of. The UN has condemned it in the past. The basic idea of the program has been around for a long time, since the 70s, because there's within the economy different sectors that have needs for workers that are unmet by the labor force in Canada. Maybe it's like short-term agricultural work has always been a big part of it. So have some people come in, work on a farm for a couple months, and then they can go home and take that money back to their country, and everyone wins kind of situation. But in more recent years, it kind of expanded to like, hey, Tim Hortons could use some people who are willing to work for less, and a lot of tech companies as well, and just more and more sectors of the economy went, oh, we can't...
I feel like service sector management positions are... no, Michelle Rempel-Gardner was digging through and highlighting some like the job postings in that category. So there was posted for like 36 bucks an hour. Like, I'm sure you could find a Canadian to do that if you wanted to.
So yeah, it really switched
intent on it. And
gears.
yeah, yeah, and this is also against the backdrop of rising youth unemployment. It's up to about 14% now. It's like double digits. And this can also be seen as part of like the broader souring, or at least changing views on immigration. That's largely downstream of the material impacts that doing it poorly has brought about on that. But yeah, I mean, when the unemployment rate's that high, and just beyond the youth unemployment rate, the general unemployment rate's been taken up a bit too. Not a surprise with everything going on, but it's harder to make the case that a lot of these positions couldn't be filled, and that the Canadian labor force is unable to fill them.
And from the individuals going through the program, the stories range from, they're fine, or they get a fine experience and they get exactly what there's promised, to just a lot of situations, an unconscionable number of situations that are just downright abuse, where your residency status is then subject to your employer's whims, right? They're not open work contracts. It's you come here to work for so-and-so, and if you piss them off, they can have you deported. So you become indentured laborers. It's not good from a historical or present context, which is where a lot of the left critique from it has come. Poilievre's critique has, centered in on the effects to the labor market, to housing, and situations like that. And now we've seen David Eby jump onto this as well and say it's time to cancel or significantly reform it as well, and condemning it for kind of the same reasons of just, what are we doing with this program? Why are we having hundreds of thousands of people come in through this? Because it's not really immigration, right? Like, it is technically, but it's temporary migration. It's come here, do a job, and then get out. I think the idea of people coming to work and build a life in Canada is something we've always liked as a country and want to aspire to, but this program is an affront to that. It's let's exploit people from other countries to do jobs we will pretend Canadians don't want to do, when we could just, like you said, try to hire them.
It's that pretend part that's the real problem here. Just like you said, there's definitely spots where it makes sense to fill in specialized positions and whatnot. Part of the NAFTA agreement, basically, there's a similar-ish program for like professionals between like the US, Canada, and Mexico, where it's like real easy to get like a work-tied visa for that, and like those ones make sense and whatnot. So it's not like the idea of having a non-immigrant intent work visas a bad thing. It can really be useful to fill certain gaps. The problem is it's kind of become disconnected from the underlying actual economic and labor market conditions, and really like tightening up that part's what should happen. And beyond the concerns pointed out earlier, I'll just also add to that there's a fair bit of economics research that shows that tight labor market conditions is generally when companies will make productivity enhancing capital investments. It usually flows from difficulty hiring to making those investments. And, if you can keep just flooding the market with cheap labor, that doesn't actually happen. So the long-term economic productivity problems the country's had would probably also help from tightening up this program significantly.
But Scott, the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses says such comments are, quote, deeply misguided and put other Canadians' jobs at risk. They're siding with John Rustad, who is against scrapping the temporary foreign worker program, arguing it would crush tourism and agriculture as industries. He is saying BC should take immigration into its own hands, which constitutionally we can, which is a weird quirk in our constitution because few people outside Quebec probably think about immigration as a provincial jurisdiction, but it's there. I don't know that David Eby wants to run an immigration program, or most provinces. I think Doug Ford hinted, jested about it, but I can't imagine it's an easy thing to do. So,
why take on that particular set of challenges there if you don't have to?
Like, fundamentally, there is a pushback from business. I agree with your assessment that forcing businesses to try harder is generally good from our economics, whether from the labor perspective or from the productivity perspective. But they don't want to, hence the lobbying that has happened to get us into this situation that is a mess. It's actually why I think Poilievre's comments got so much play, because the federal NDP has talked about this for years and probably talks about it less now because no one paid attention to them eventually. But then Poilievre is like, hey, this program sucks. And people are like, hey, you don't usually say that thing. That's interesting. So
Yeah, I can't remember Jagmeet Singh talking about it. I'm sure he's mentioned it once.
It's
or
one of those
twice,
things
but
I could probably find the press releases on the NDP, but
Yeah.
it's not news.
No. And the Polyev comments contrast quite a bit with Carney, who, when asked about this, basically said, yeah, what I've heard from business is their first major concern is tariffs, and second is how do they get more temporary workers?
Yeah. I did a quick Google search of the NDP's website on temporary foreign workers, the federal NDP. They called it a problem in August 2024. In November 2024, they wanted to see closed work permits abolished. They've talked about it in 2022 and 2014. It's always been there. It just doesn't get the headlines. It's water is wet situation. But yeah, the contrast between Polyev here and Rustad is really interesting. Rustad being closer to the ground in the small business community, I guess, but Polyev having a better sense of the like populist energy makes me wonder how things will go, because Polyev's last few months, he won his by-election safely. That wasn't a surprise. But like, has he learned the lessons, or has he learned any lessons? It's kind of still this open question.
No. It's not in our show notes, but like the other earlier this week, last week, sometime, he had a whole press conference thing about really repealing the carbon tax. The industrial one that I don't think anyone actually cares about politically at this point. But that it was full on doubling down on the thing that didn't even work all that well in the last election, and it's been taken off the table. It's very much just like not learning the lessons, as far as I can tell, and you get the sense from the people that have remained part of that team that they don't actually think there was anything wrong with how they ran the campaign.
Hey, they got more votes than the Conservative Party of Canada has ever gotten. It came.
I mean, that's true. They didn't win, and there were some pretty obvious missteps.
Oh, so I think we've seen some hints from Mark Carney that he's open to looking at the temporary foreign worker program, but there's a lot on his plate, so I guess we'll have to see this fall how they tweak it, or if they take up these calls to just gut the whole thing, which I would be shocked if they did that overnight. That would be a big shakeup for a lot of businesses and people looking to come to Canada on short-term contracts, because there's a whole industry of people, consultants who go and find the people to get these jobs. So, I mean, maybe things can happen fast. I'm not super optimistic a lot of the time, though.
I haven't seen a lot of indication of things happening fast from this government. Granted, faster than the previous one, but it was such a low bar.
On Polyev, unless you have anything else on temporary foreign workers. Okay.
No.
Cut that. On Polyev, he possibly is holding the same kind of line he did last year, where following some, horrific stories of home invasions where people bad stories where people kill others or severely injure people who break into their home defending themselves.
Yeah, so to set the stage on this one, week and a half ago, 2 weeks, I lost track of time a little bit in the waning days of summer, but in Lindsay, Ontario, there was a 3 a.m. home invasion. The occupant, the resident of the home, and the person doing the home invasion both got charged in the incident. The person defending themselves from the home invasion got charged for doing so based on the limited information coming out now. Basically defended himself with a knife. The intruder has also been charged, included a weapons charge that reportedly was a crossbow. But needless to say, this drew up quite a bit of outrage, concern, and strong feelings that there was an injustice in charging the person who was merely defending their home from a 3 a.m. home invasion on this. First broke out into the general discourse when Doug Ford commented on it. And yeah, since then there's been kind of a bit of a ongoing discussion and debate in Canada over where the line should be for self-defense.
Yeah. So there is a line right now. You are allowed to defend yourself. To be clear, there's a legal test for it that has certain qualifications, as every legal test does. Pierre Poilievre says, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't have to think about a legal test. You just do what's right. So he wants to implement a, quote, stand on guard principle where you're presumed to have reasonable, your use of force is presumed reasonable against someone who would illegally enter your home and poses a threat to inside. So if someone breaks in, go to town, Scott.
I mean, presumed reasonable is not the same as 100%
Sure.
considered reasonable, and you can't prove it. It was basically like shift the burden a bit. And, there's this story, the CBC story on this also notes there was a similar sort of thing happened in 2019. I can think of one from like 2011 involving someone who fired a couple warning shots when I think it was 7 people attacked him and his property, and spent years having to fight to defend himself on that one from charges. And the sense isn't that like there was never a potential time where it could be taken too far. It's the injustice of being pulled through the process on this for merely exercise and self-defense, and one's right to self-defense on this, and the process being the punishment on it. And, that's where I think Poilievre has and Ford for that matter, have a pretty strong point. Like, nothing that has been made public on this particular case out of Ontario suggests that there was any unreasonable force being used. The guy had a deadly weapon, so it's pretty presumptive that it should be a reasonable use of self-defense, because that is a lethal scenario there.
So either there's information about the case we're missing, or prosecutors are overzealous. Cops maybe in league with prosecutors are sharing too much information, which I would not put past them. The debate around the legal question is interesting, right? Politically, I find this interesting because it mirrors a lot of the like stand your ground stuff we saw Republicans in like Florida famously a few years ago picking up and importing some of that kind of rhetoric ideology into Canadian. It's not surprising for Poilievre.
Is it an ideology? Like, you should be able to defend yourself and not be dragged through court for years when somebody breaks into your house at 3 a.m. with a deadly weapon. Hardly seems a particularly ideological proposition. It's one that I think pretty much every Canadian would agree with.
But it's not clear that Poilievre's solution is the right way to approach that.
So we'll have
right? His solution isn't just solving that, it's creating a new onus that pretty much lets you do a lot more damage to anyone coming into your home. Like, you don't have unlimited right to kill someone who enters your property.
Not unlimited right, but like there should in fact be a strong presumption that if you're at home and somebody by force or by deception, by breaking and enters the home and threatens one, that there should be a presumption that forcing the use of self-defense is reasonable in that case. And, there should not be the case where that has to then get drawn out and the person who was the victim here has to then spend 5 or 6 figures to vindicate their right to self-defense in those cases. So, the Line podcast had an interview with a defense attorney. I believe it was the week before last. It's fairly close to the top of the feed on that. Wouldn't be hard to find. who basically suggested some kind of, preliminary hearing where the Crown would have to show that not only was their force used and it was potentially, a little excessive, but that it would have to be in such great excess that it would shock the conscience of a regular Canadian, which seems like a reasonable bar. Because, when it is in the heat of the moment, people are not going to rationally go through a 6-point legal test and calibrate everything precisely in the moment. So there does need to be some understanding of that in the law and in the discretionary choices by police and prosecutors on that accounts for that.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how the politics of this plays out, if this kind of just wanes. He's obviously going to try and bring forward a private member's bill on this. That's the thing I'm going to be interested in, what the actual threshold they want to propose on that one is, because just the press release and the press conference on that, doesn't get into that finer point. Poilievre not talking detailed policy in his press conferences? What? Where's the kill the intruders to, stand? Oh, and that's where
I will give Poilievre credit. In the lead up to the election, they did drop, when they did their policy announcements, the backgrounders on there were fairly detailed on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
On there. But yeah, the politics of this is going to be interesting. I mean, Sean Fraser already put his foot in the mouth when he responded to this by saying something like, "This isn't the Wild West," which is going to get clipped and put in every single ad from now on crime, as they look how out of touch the Liberals are on this.
It's not wrong, though. We don't live in the Wild West, and we don't want it to be.
No, and part of that too is when the Americans tried to import some of that Wild West energy into Western Canada, we set up the RCMP and made sure that there was law and order in that going to be there, and there wasn't if someone invades your home, just comply with them. Don't worry about that. That was the York Regional Police, the chief yesterday, I believe, discussing yet another home invasion that was deadly. But 2 years ago, I want to say it was Peel, but I could be wrong on that. One of the GTA Ontario police forces suggested that people should just leave their keys out in the front of their home, because the people there to steal the cars, they'll only, if they can find the keys quickly, they might not do as much damage and stuff. And that's,
Scott, you're not convincing me that the problem isn't cops and prosecutors.
Well, I mean, there is a bit of that, but part of the point of this is that you actually do need those systems in place. You do need the government to actually take this stuff seriously and not basically preemptively surrender to it, like those two police officers were suggesting. Looking at that, you get the impression that the police are more concerned about someone defending themselves than they are about the fact that there's been a bunch of home invasions in Ontario.
I mean, I think the charitable thing is they don't want to see people hurt or injured, and so they're suggesting ways to try to reduce the likelihood of violent altercations. That,
what's a great way to do that? Not having people break into other people's homes.
Yeah,
the onus really is
Poilievre's suggestion here doesn't do anything about that. We can lower crime through a lot of social policies.
Yeah, and we can also lower crime by making it costlier and riskier to do crime.
I don't believe Poilievre's suggestion here solves that. But
criminals should be concerned about breaking into someone's home. They should feel that is an unacceptably high risk. And the police should not be on their side when it comes to trying to lower the risk for them breaking in.
Let's jump to... There's no segue here. Mark Carney has announced the creation of the major projects offices I think the only really interesting thing here is its headquarters is going to be in Calgary, and there's going to be several offices in other cities.
Well, also it's headed up by a
oh yeah,
former TransCanada executive, I believe. The energy pipeline company, not the highway system.
Is she still?
No, she must have left the thing to take this role. But yeah, I had a few other. Believe she worked for an electrical utility at one point. I should have her bio up. I don't have it in front of me at the moment. Basically, in the bunch of major infrastructure related jobs in the past. But yeah, between that and the location, it's the signal on what's an acceptable project for the government could not be clearer on that one.
Pipelines, baby.
That's one of many they're considering.
He has teased recently on a trip that some...
Oh, BC Hydro, that was the electrical utility she worked for.
He is looking at port infrastructure in Churchill, Manitoba, and Montreal, as well as how to get LNG to said ports.
The Churchill one's an odd one. Like, why would you set that as your major export one? I definitely see the case for rebuilding Churchill, rebuilding the connections to it. The railway that leads there is in pretty rough shape these days.
It's a way to spend a lot of money.
There's absolutely a role for that, both for like shipping grain from the prairies as well as other products there. It would, be good to have more north-facing ports in the country, particularly as the Arctic becomes, an increasingly important area of geopolitics on that. There's a role for that. Strongly in support of expanding Churchill and getting that up and running in a much better way than it currently is. It doesn't make a lot of sense as far as I can tell for an LNG export, because, the peak demand for that is going to be winter in Europe, or at least as far as like the major direction that stuff's going to be going eastward. And like at that point, you're not shipping much out of Churchill.
Bringing it back to the office, Trans Mountain does still list Dawn Farrell as the president of the board on their website. I don't know if they've just not updated that. They have posted news updates in the last few days, but, not every website updates their board of directors that frequently.
Yeah, and they might be waiting to a point.
It feels wrong for her to be president of a of a pipeline and major projects office.
Yeah, that's got to just be a delay on that, because I cannot imagine that is compliant with the federal legislation on conflicts of interest and stuff on that. But yeah, they'll probably wait to name the successor and just update it when that's named, would be my guess.
I did also see in Googling for that she's going to get about $500,000 in salary. The exact amount isn't said, but the council or the cabinet order grants her between like $500,000 and $675,000 salary, which I guess is what you pay the head of a project office like this. I'm just jealous.
Yeah, nonprofits don't pay as well, do they? As major.
No, I would like basically an order of magnitude more money, Scott. Maybe not quite, but close to that. But Jesus. Yeah, it drew a lot of attention for those reasons. Tying with that, Global News has also released some Privy Council office polling that the government has done on what kind of projects Canadians would like, and the answer is all of them.
Yeah, pretty much everything they polled had somewhere between strong and North Korean election level support.
Except nuclear in Quebec. That got 32%. Everything else was majority.
Yeah, it was the only thing less than... liquefied natural gas terminals. I'm also seeing 0.3% under the majority on that one in Quebec as well. But yeah, whether it's, hydroelectricity, highways, long-distance electrical, cradle mineral mining, oil pipelines, high-speed rail, natural gas, nuclear, there's pretty strong support for it across the board in Canada.
Yeah, the easy ones there are hydro, highways, transmission lines, port expansion. Those all have like over 80% in a lot of provinces. There's a little bit of regional variation that's interesting. Hydro and offshore wind aren't as popular in Alberta as the rest of the country because I guess that province is full of selfish pricks, or at least a few who bring their numbers down. But yeah, it's like just pick the projects you want to work on and build them. The least popular project nationally is carbon capture and sequestration facility, which had only 57% support nationally. But still, like, majority support. So
yeah, the interesting thing here for me is that oil pipelines clocked in about 6% higher nationally and 10% higher in Quebec than LNG terminals, which does not make any sense. Like, even if you don't love LNG for like climate and stuff, it's cleaner than oil. Like it's cleaner than oil. It just makes no sense to be more opposed to LNG than it does to oil pipelines.
Is it?
And yet there's a gap.
Is it the difference between the word terminal and pipeline? I don't know. Maybe people know that LNG comes from fracking, and they just have like an aversion to fracking from environmental propaganda, essentially. Yeah, that one was weird.
Yeah, no, but like, it's not like that propaganda is less against oil pipelines.
No, but the videos of tap water being on fire is scary. Even though the methane that's coming out of your tap evaporates and doesn't land in your glass and you don't drink methane. Because you still shouldn't have methane coming out of your pipes, obviously. I'm not pro methane pipes into your house. But yeah, it's a great poll for the government to not really give them an answer other than like just do something other than nuclear in Quebec. Like, that's the only thing you shouldn't do unless you want to piss a bunch of people.
Which I don't think anyone was seriously proposing, because Ontario and New Brunswick have been big on a push for nuclear, with actually Saskatchewan too, I think, here and there. Like, as far as I know, there's been no talk of a nuclear project in Quebec, and there really wouldn't need to be, considering just how many damn dams there are in that province. They're a huge net supporter of electricity because of the abundant hydropower there.
So yeah, we should get some details out of this office soon. I guess the office itself will help steer the major projects that get picked toward approval.
Yeah.
This is the annoying, like, you wanted the projects to be announced and to start happening, but instead we're getting the plan to do them.
Yeah, the announcement about the headquarters of it. There's going to be additional regional offices here. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, in part because putting this so far away from Ottawa, is there going to be tension between, the Ottawa civil service establishment and the major projects office in Calgary? Like, you could easily see there being fighting between there. Like, how does that shake out? Does the major projects office have, sufficient either direct power or clout to win if there's a conflict on that?
Is this just going to be another infrastructure bank or supercluster situation? Quite likely. Easy to set up offices and give people checks for $500,000 a year, and then thing happens.
Yeah, it's going to be about what the processes that come in to support that are going to be. Because, in theory, having a single window for projects rather than dozens and dozens of different agencies and stuff having to do separate applications to all of them makes a lot of sense. Just whether that can actually be borne out's the question.
one of the places Mark Carney was hoping to get ideas for how the government should move forward was an odd choice. President of the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, was scheduled to come and speak to cabinet.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, the Heritage Foundation is a US-based right-wing think tank, famous for the Project 2025 document. I'm not entirely sure it's an accurate characterization to say ideas for what to do so much as a trying to just get any insight into what's going on in the States. Like I know do Democrats like to say Carney's basically a conservative prime minister, but Mark Carney is not going to be deciding how to run Canada based on what the Heritage Foundation from a different country is going to suggest. Like, this really strikes me as a case where, know your enemy. Like, there is a tense and somewhat adversarial situation with the U.S., and like, if you can get the person who sketched out a lot of what the plan for what the U.S. is currently doing to explain their thinking, you can better understand how to respond to it and what's the likely responses to the responses are going to be.
Yeah,
that said, it's politically was terrible for them when it got announced.
Yeah, that's definitely the charitable take. It's the, let's hear them out. In theory, I think it was supposed to be primarily on economics and trade, which is obviously the highest priority for Canada to deal with the States. And so figuring out where they sit on those is understandable. I also likened it to Mackenzie King inviting Adolf Eichmann to understand Germany's economic policies in 1934.
That said, if in 1934 the Germans had told us exactly what they were going to do, it would have probably been a little more helpful.
He wrote a fucking book called Project 2025. It's there. We don't need to talk to him. Hitler wrote a book, Scott. It was there. People just didn't believe it. It's a pretty famous book. Gets banned a lot for good reason.
Yeah, but there's the stuff that doesn't get in there that would still be probably useful to find out.
Regrettably, though, Dr. Roberts' office indicated that he can no longer join cabinet to present today, the PMO released as a statement, and they will continue further engagement and discussions with him and other leading U.S. policy figures soon. That was the quick follow-up announcement, leaving it unclear as to whether Kevin Roberts canceled or was canceled.
I'm going to guess the latter. That really felt like a sudden disinvitation.
Yeah, they left it on warm tones, though, and didn't make any apologies for it, but it's a interesting situation.
But yeah, politically it blew up in their face. Like, there was a lot of backlash to it. Yeah, I totally understand why they wanted to do it. But yeah, as soon as it became public, it was going to just cause them a lot of problems.
Speaking of problems, the CRA, they have been told they have 100 days to come up with a plan. They've been told to come up with a 100-day plan to fix service delays. How? Doesn't matter. Just be better, said the minister in a letter. Because that's all it takes. It just took a letter telling them to not suck. If only Trudeau's government had written a letter, Scott, things could have been better. Or we'll find out in 3 months.
Yeah, we'll find out in 3 months. It's all going to be in the implementation. That said, the number of unanswered calls that go into the CRA continues to climb, and it's pretty unacceptable. So, well, good that they're at least trying to fix it. Whether or not it will actually get fixed is a whole other deal.
Yeah, we had a little back and forth in Slack about this, trying to figure out, what's the problem? Because against this background, the CRA and all of government is facing this 15% cut situation, the austerity budget that Carney has promised. And he said austerity budget in French with a investment focus. Cut and spend budget, I guess. But like, how many people does CRA have working the phones? There's a little bit of data on that. I found StatsCan data showing the number of employees at the CRA, which is the whole agency, not just working the phones. You know, it did jump.
The Globe Mail, though, does, I think, have actual numbers on people working the phone.
It's hard to get a long-term view of it, right?
Oh, the recent, yeah.
StatsCan gave me a pretty good view of like how CRA has grown as a whole, with a big jump in 2022, 2023, kind of like come down a little bit since then. But how many of those are?
Yeah. So as of June, there's 4,133 people working for the call centers, and that is down from a COVID peak of 6,704.
And COVID was obviously a massive strain on the CRA when.
Yeah, and they also were the frontline delivery for like a bunch of the benefits, most notably CERB. So, yeah, doing a surge on that absolutely made sense. You would, and as a result, you would expect that when those programs got wound down, the call center staffing would drop as well on that. Yeah, doing like a little back of the envelope. If you take that many people, take out about 15% for, management, vacation time, etc. on some of that stuff, and assume a call takes half an hour to process. Some of them will be a little less, some of them will be more.
Not many are going to be less if you've ever been on the phone with the CRA.
But yeah, it can take a while. But like that's 14 million-ish calls they can answer in a year. Like, that doesn't seem crazy when you consider that, like, most people should be able to file a tax return without needing to talk to the CRA in any given year.
It tells me there's a lot of process issues, for sure.
Yeah. And like, that's where, one of the things that came up in the Slack discussion, where it seems like there could be a lot of room to improve, is actually just fixing some of the stuff in the agency so you don't need to call in to get it sorted out.
And some of that might be easy. Some of that is probably going to take more than 100 days. The automatic tax filing thing that we've both wanted to see for a long time is still chugging along as a garbage pilot that should be for everyone who doesn't have a complicated tax situation. I was joking before the call before we started the recording that they should just have an online scheduling system where you book a 30-minute appointment to have someone call you at that time. Never mind that it'll take 3 months to get your call, but like, at least then you can say, hey, I need to find out something, but I don't need to know today. I just need to know in like this quarter. Then you can get your call. Boom. Nice and easy. Instead, we're probably going to get some bullshit like AI chatbots that give you wrong information. It was pointed out they have wrong information on their website as well by Watchdog Reports earlier this year. So, man, the CRA is one of the better federal government agencies, and it's also needs a lot of work.
Yeah, like that's kind of a continuing story, is that a lot of this stuff in the government just started to not work all that well, particularly in like the last 5 years, I would say.
What happened 5 years ago?
No. There was a big source of disruption, but like a lot of stuff just doesn't work well anymore in the government. Took them months to figure out how to expeditiously issue passports. CRA can't answer most of the calls that come in. There's just there really was something to the whole Canada's broken thing that was talked about a year ago on some of this stuff, is like a lot of the government institutions and other stuff just doesn't work all that well. And there's a lot of work to be done just going in and doing the unglamorous work of actually just getting the civil service to be able to do the basic tasks that it has been tasked with and has had as part of its mandate for decades now. Running a call center is not something new that the CRA is having to figure out how to do for the first time. It's it's a pretty basic function that has largely been figured out. It should not be too difficult to get this working again.
Though I kind of feel like there was never a point in history where it was like, oh man, I love calling the CRA. This is going to be a pleasant use of my time.
Nobody likes dealing with the tax authorities, but, can you get someone on the line to talk to try and sort this stuff out was something that was absolutely better in the past.
Some people are vying to make the future better as the federal NDP's leadership race has officially kicked off this week. The web page is open. You can download the paperwork if you want to start collecting signatures, and several people are officially. Farmer Tony McQuail in Huron-Bruce is out there. This is the guy in Huron County who randomly announced he wants to be a candidate, like was one of the first people. And I love him. I have decided. He's probably a little bit granola for me, but I just love the spirit that he's just this like old dude who's ran a couple times and is like, you know what? My turn. Also trying to put also out there trying to get their signatures are Heather McPherson and Avi Lewis. McPherson, current MP and foreign affairs critic for the party. Edmonton MP, who took over from Linda Duncan, pretty well respected in the party, has a perception of being less anti-oil than most of the rest of the party, particularly being an Edmonton MP.
I mean, that's a really low bar, though.
Yeah. Avi Lewis on the other end, as anti-oil as you can get, co-author of the Leap Manifesto, documentarian, and like heir to NDP. If Justin Trudeau was the son of a Liberal leader, Avi Lewis is the grandson of a NDP leader and the son of another prominent NDP activist. And he's out here in BC. Eve Engler is out there trying to campaign. It's uncomfortable to watch as he goes on like the MAGA Communist podcast. Yep. You heard that.
Or
you
just,
that.
Yeah. There's that. I mean, there's the whole like deciding it's a good idea to relitigate whether the Rwandan genocide happened. Like, just a weird guy that is way outside the mainstream on all this.
I won't be surprised if the NDP says no, thanks, Eve.
I mean, they should.
Or they just let
sure.
him not get the $125,000 he needs. There are also a couple other names I haven't seen before floating around. President of the Longshore Union, Rob Ashton, apparently sniffing around, as well as Campbell River City Councillor Tennille Johnston, who was a MP candidate as well. Neither of them I've heard, but I saw quoted in one of these articles.
Well, yeah, those ones are at least interesting because you have the names that have at least quasi-officially been put forward for this. They're all very much leaning in the direction of doubling down on the NDP being the party of very urban, very progressive people that really is decidedly moved away from its more blue-collar and working class and rural roots on that, and at least having one other person on there, because, Heather McPherson represents the safest and downtown Edmonton, safest riding that's downtown Edmonton, worked as an NGO for NGOs before, hardly the kind of person to speak to Timmins and Windsor and places they need to win back.
Yeah, but you could say that about Pierre Polyev. And he's still trying.
Hey, he won those ridings.
That's what I mean. Is background isn't everything.
Maybe she'll surprise me. I mean, Avi Lewis, like the Leap Manifesto was, very unpopular outside of like the extreme like NDP core. Like that's going nowhere on any
I
of
got
that.
news for you. Wasn't popular with half the NDP.
Yeah, exactly. Like Lewis will just continue the decline of the NDP, and like doubling down on all those mistakes. Eve Angler, like you put him in charge of the party, and yeah, you might pick up like the 100 votes in East Vancouver that are currently split between the two communist parties that run candidates there, but you're not growing anything else, and you're gonna have a whole lot of other people shying away from the party because of the, well, frankly, insane positions he holds on a whole host of things, and the tendency to make friendly with the major types and everything. Yeah, I don't know much about Rob Ashton, but that's at least like the first sign there might be a slight bit of energy in the party towards recapturing, or at least putting a little more focus on regaining that support among working class and more rural and blue collar Canadians.
Knocking Heather McPherson for being in a safe seat is kind of wild, given all the NDP have right now are safe seats. I get what you were trying to say in terms of her being urban, but I think she's probably the front runner right now. A lot of people like and respect her, and she's doing some good work. So it'll be an uphill battle for Lewis or Ashton or anyone else to get in this race and catch up with where she can probably go with it. I am curious to see what they all bring forward. I think the NDP needs a stronger critique of the Liberals than they've had for a decade. And I think they need to even go, like, Jack Layton had charisma, but I think his policy wouldn't work right now. If you remember back, dear listeners, to the 2011 election when he did so well, his like front running policies were, we need to cut credit card fees and
lower phone
bills. It was like pocketbook issues, which worked very much then. And I think some of those would be helpful now, but like it's a much more broken country, to put it back in that language, or there's like much more broken systemic issues to deal with. I'm not saying they need to adopt the Zohran Mamdani exactly, but like have some energy, have some excitement, and have some big ideas that are different than Carney.
Also, figure out what
you're going to do.
Figure out what you're going to do, because and figure out what the party wants to be, too.
Because right now it's not anything.
Because they've been being pulled in two directions. There is that more old school New Democratic coalition that was a lot more like, rural, working class, blue collar, etc. on that, and that's not something we've really seen. Yeah, there's the occasional thing said that gives lip service to that, and whatnot, but that's not where the energy's been in the party for a long time now. And if they keep in the direction they're going, they're just going to be a party that fights for a few urban seats against the Liberals, and it's going to entirely be a party that contests the red-orange ridings and basically cedes the blue-orange ones, or are they going to kind of tack back towards that? And maybe they are, but I mean, Don Davies made some news earlier this week for some comments on Steve Paikin's podcast about needing to do that, and how the party's maybe putting a little too much emphasis on identity issues to the detriment of that other part of the party. But I don't know. I'm not seeing any real signs there's particularly any interest among a lot of the rank and file New Democrats to really tack back in like a significant way rather than a rhetorical way.
I'll give Tony McQuail, that organic farmer, this. He's the first one to come out and say we should pursue collaboration or merger with the Greens, which is the kind of position I would hate most of the time. But at this point, like, I'm open to exploring it, especially if Elizabeth May actually stops being in that party. She said she's going to reconsider being leader again, I think, but she might still keep her seat. But which is,
well, I mean, actuarially, there will be a time where she is no longer leader.
No, she's in those secret calls with Putin and Xi about life extension. I'm pretty sure. But really, like, this is a discussion that's kind of happening in the UK right now between Greens and a Jeremy Corbyn startup party called tentatively Your Party, but then not officially Your Party. That's just a placeholder name in a bungled rollout of a not name. About, like, should these two merge? Because they're both kind of pursuing an eco-socialist energy, which is getting, some attention in the UK because there's a lot of discontent with the, recently elected Starmer government. And if you can capture that, you don't need to compete against, at least under first past the post, until you get electoral reform. So I'll give McQuail credit for putting something out there that's not just like, hi, I am, the competent MP, or I don't know if Rwandan genocide was real. Those are... One's a boring option, one's a bad option. Very bad. Anyway. I'm going to keep my eye on this race. We probably won't touch on it for a few weeks until something interesting happens. But, yeah. I guess we have the BC Green leadership race to wrap up soon, and I'll look forward to that leadership debate.
Yeah, they're having a debate. Was it when's the debate on that?
September 13th.
Okay, so
when voting opens.
Yeah. Why not do that? That's everything else they've decided to do this leadership race as being questionable. Why not include the debate in that one?
And that has been Politicos. Find links to everything we talked about at politicos.ca. Support the show and get access to our exclusive Slack channel at patreon.com/politicos. Our intro music is Beautiful British Columbia by Serge Plotnikov. Politicos is a production of Leg and Boot Media. Audio editing provided by Jesse Woodward at listener-supported CHLY 101.7 FM in Nanaimo. Learn more at chly.ca.